Hi, hello everyone. Welcome back to the questions based on jurisprudence. The first question: what is specific deterrence? Specific deterrence punishes an offender to prevent them from committing future crimes. What is PIL, or public interest litigation? PIL, or public interest litigation, refers to litigation filed in court to protect a public interest such as environmental protection, human rights, and social justice. What are the main sources of law? The main sources of law are legislation, precedents, customs, and juristic writings. What is the primary objective of PIL? The primary objective is to safeguard the rights of marginalized groups, protects the environment, and to uphold public welfare. What are the DPSP, or Directive Principles of State Policy? DPSP are guidelines in Part 4 of the Indian Constitution that direct the state to promote a social and economic welfare. They are non-justifiable but aim to ensure justice, equality, and the well-being of citizens. What is punishment? Punishment is the imposition of a penalty on an individual found guilty of committing a crime or violating a law. What is distributive justice? Distributive justice focuses on the fair distribution of goods, benefits, and burdens in society. What is an example of distributive justice? Progressive taxation, welfare programs, and affirmative action policies. What is the key principle of distributive justice? Fair distribution of social goods based on needs, merits, or contribution. What does retributive justice emphasize? Retributive justice emphasizes punishing wrongdoers in proportion to the crime committed. What is an example of retributive justice? A thief being imprisoned as punishment for his crime. What is corrective justice? Corrective justice seeks to restore balance when a wrongful harm or injury has occurred. What is an example of corrective justice? A court ordering compensation for a person injured due to another's negligence. What are the main purposes of punishment? The main purposes of punishment are deterrence, retribution, rehabilitation, incapacitation, and restorative justice. What is social change? Social change refers to the transformation of cultural, economic, and political structures, norms, and values in a society over time. How does law act as a catalyst for social change? Law drives social change by formalizing changes in societal values and pushing for reforms in areas like civil rights, gender equality, and environmental protection. Give an example of a law that acted as a catalyst for social change. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the US helped end racial discrimination and segregation. What is the principle of retributive theory? Retributive theory is based on a principle of just deserts, meaning that offenders should be punished because they deserve it. What is the main goal of retributive justice? The goal of retributive justice is to impose a punishment proportionate to the crime committed. Why is retributive justice considered backward-looking? It focuses on past actions rather than future consequences. What is procedural justice? Procedural justice focuses on the fairness of decision-making processes and legal proceedings. What is an example of procedural justice? A fair trial where the defendant has the right to be heard and receive an impartial judgment. What is social justice? The fair distribution of wealth, opportunities, and privileges to reduce inequality. What is general deterrence? General deterrence punishes an offender to discourage others in society from committing similar crimes. Why are the DPSP considered non-justifiable? The directive principles of state policy or DPSP are non-justifiable because they are not legally enforceable by courts, meaning individuals cannot sue the government for the implementation. Name 3 key objectives of DPSP. Promote social welfare, ensure economic justice, protect vulnerable groups such as women, children, and workers. How is PIL related to judicial activism? PIL is often associated with judicial activism where courts take proactive steps to address societal issues even without formal petitions. What does locus standi mean in the context of PIL? Traditionally, it required a person to have a direct stake in a case, but a PIL allows public-spirited individuals or organizations to file cases on behalf of affected groups. How does law reflect social change? Laws often change in response to shifts in societal attitudes, such as the legalization of same-sex marriage and drug decriminalization. What is an example of law reflecting social change? The decriminalization of homosexuality in many countries reflects changing public attitudes towards LGBTQ+ rights. How does law maintain social order during periods of change? Law ensures that new norms and structures are accepted and implemented in an organized manner, preventing chaos. How can law act as a social control mechanism? Law can reinforce existing power structures and resist change, such as segregation laws or colonial exploitation laws. Which part of the Indian Constitution contains the DPSP or Directive Principles of State Policy? Part 4 of the Indian Constitution. What was the ruling in the case of State of Madras versus Champakam Dorairajan, 1951? The Supreme Court ruled that DPSP could not override fundamental rights, leading to the First Amendment, which allowed reservations in educational institutions. Who was one of the earliest proponents of natural law? Aristotle. What does Dworkin mean by law as integrity? Law should be interpreted as a coherent system of principles that fit together and justify the legal system as a whole. How does Dworkin distinguish between rules and principles? Rules provide clear directives, while principles are broader standards of justice or fairness that guide decision making. What role do judges play in a Dworkin's theory? Judges must interpret the law based on moral principles and not just apply rules mechanically. What is Bharat jurisprudence? Bharat jurisprudence refers to the legal system and principles rooted in Indian cultural, philosophical, and spiritual traditions, blending ancient Indian legal philosophy with modern law. What is a criticism of deterrence theory? Critics argue that severe punishment does not always deter crime effectively. What is the primary focus of rehabilitation theory? Rehabilitation focuses on reforming offenders so they can reintegrate into society. What are the common methods used in a rehabilitation? Education, therapy, counseling, and a vocational training. What is a major criticism of rehabilitation theory? Some offenders may not respond to rehabilitation, and it may reduce the emphasis on punishment. What is the goal of incapacitation theory? To remove offenders from society to prevent future crimes. What is the central concept of Bharat jurisprudence? The central concept is dharma, which represents moral law, righteousness, and ethical principles governing individuals and society. How does Bharat jurisprudence differ from Western legal system? Western legal system often view law as a set of rules, whereas Bharat jurisprudence sees law as a reflection of moral and ethical order. What role does customary law play in Bharat jurisprudence? Customary law plays a significant role, especially in rural areas and among indigenous communities, governing personal and social matters. Which ancient texts influenced Bharat jurisprudence? It is influenced by texts like Manusmriti and Arthashastra, which provides legal and governance principles. What role do social movements play in legal reform? Social movements push for legal changes to address injustices as seen in labor rights, women's rights, and civil rights movements. What is an example of social movement leading to legal change? The women's rights movement led to voting rights for women through suffrage laws.